Okay, so in this video, I'm going to be showing you the complete blueprint I follow to build founder-led personal brands that drive demand and actually generate revenue. This isn't theory, this is literally the exact roadmap, step by step, in the order I executed from the very first conversation to a fully running content engine. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what we built, why we build it in that order, and what you can expect at each stage. And like I said, because it's the exact playbook that I follow for my clients, you might want to have a pen and paper if you want to do it yourself without needing any outside help. So let's start breaking it down. Everything starts with a deep dive. This is a 2 hour conversation where I need to understand three things from you. The first is your expertise. What have you spent all of these years building? What do you know that most people don't? What are the frameworks, processes, and insights that live in your head that your ideal clients would pay to access? The second is your story. How did you get here? What were the turning points? What did you learn the hard way? What decisions shape you? Because your story is your competitive advantage. It's what separates you from everyone else who does what you do. The third is your competitive positioning. Who do you work with? Who don't you work with? What makes your approach different? And why do clients choose you over someone else? This deep dive gives me everything I need to build your content archetype and position you correctly. We record this conversation, everything you say becomes the foundation for your content. By the end of this call, like I said, I have mapped your expertise, your story, and your positioning. And now we move on to the execution. Next, I build what I call a content archetype. This is your content blueprint. It defines exactly what you talk about and why. See, most founders, they post randomly, sometimes tactical advice, sometimes this, sometimes that. There's no structure, there's no strategy. The content archetype gives you that structure. It's built around 4 types of content. The first is tactical content. This is actionable advice your audience can use immediately. It's the frameworks, the processes, the breakdowns. This brings people in. It establishes your expertise without you having to say, I'm an expert. Now, the second is case studies. These are stories of specific outcomes you delivered, proof that you can actually deliver what you sell. This builds credibility. See, anyone can give advice, not everyone can show results. The third is industry insights, your take on trends, changes, what's happening in your space, in your industry. This positions you as a thought leader, someone who sees what others miss. And the fourth is personal stories, which is your journey, your lessons learned, what makes you human. Because see, this humanizes the brand. It builds trust on a deeper level because people see themselves in your story. Every piece of content you publish falls into one of these 4 types of categories. Each one serves a strategic purpose. And this becomes your content roadmap for the next 6 to 12 months. Now, before we start posting, we need to optimize your LinkedIn profile into a landing page. See, most founders treat their LinkedIn profile like it's a resume. It's not a resume, it's your storefront. When someone lands on your profile, they need to immediately understand what you do, who you work with, why you're different, and what to do next. So here's how I structure it. The first thing that people see is your banner. It needs to communicate your value proposition in one sentence. No fancy graphics, nothing like that. Clear proposition. Like from my side, it's transform your expertise and stories into influence. Then comes the headline. This tells people exactly what you do and who you work with. Like for me, it's building elite personal brands for founders and executives. Nothing too vague, nothing too generic. It's clear and direct. Next, of course, as we move down is your about section. This is where we tell your story. So the structure that I like to follow is the first thing is the hook, which is your value proposition in a single sentence. Then your story, how you got there, the turning point, the aha moment summed up, and then what you do now, which basically shows who you work with and what exactly you build for them. Then the next section is how it works, the process. Finally, a call to action, how, they get in touch with you. And one last kind of statement of a personal touch that shows what you do outside of the work, kind of just humanizing everything at the end of it. Now, as you move down your profile, again, the next section is called the featured section. This is where you pin your best case studies, your best content, any frameworks, any lead magnets, or free resources that people can use. So when someone views your profile, they immediately access your best work. Now, finally, the experience section. You position yourself as the founder. It shows your credibility, your track record, your expertise. So by the end of this step, your profile works as a landing page. When someone views it, they immediately understand what you do and how to work with you. Now that your profile is ready as a landing page, we move on to setting up the infrastructure, which is basically the tools and software that make this entire system run. The first thing that we're going to be using is Getting Sales Navigator. This is how we build your ICP list. We filter by industry, company size, revenue, role, funding stage, all of these different criteria that match your ideal clients. And this basically gives us a list of the exact people you want to connect with or potentially have as your clients down the line. We set up a second tool. It's called heyreach.io. This is how we expand your network. We run connection campaigns to that ICP list. No pitch, just a blank connection request. And this software basically allows you to automate that. So once you upload the list, it automatically sends out connection requests to people in your ICP and they start engaging. That saves you a lot of time, manually researching and sending out connection requests because you're building a network of the exact people you want to work with. Then, of course, another software is called Teamfluence. So this is how we track intent. Now, I'll get into this more later in the video, but intent is basically every signal your ICP exhibits. That could be a profile visit, a new follower, a connection request, a comment, a link click, any action that take on your profile basically gets tracked in one place with this software. So when someone shows intent, we know and we reach out accordingly. And the final thing that we're going to be setting up is a newsletter platform. This is how we build your own audience that's independent of any platform, any algorithm changes. We set up the infrastructure so you're ready to start capturing emails and building your list. So by the end of week 1, everything is in place. The profile is optimized, the content archetype is built, the tools are set up, and now we start publishing. So for the first 100 days, the goal is simple. Post for 100 consecutive days. Because see, this isn't about perfection, it's about momentum. And here's how we do it. I get on a 1-hour call every single week with my clients. I ask them questions around the 4 content archetypes. They talk, I record it. Then I use AI to turn those spoken words into content that sounds exactly like them, because it is them. So their language, their voice, their expertise, everything is there. And I publish that content consistently across the 4 types: tactical posts, case studies, industry insights, and personal stories. So the formats that I like to use are, of course, text posts, there's carousels, there's polls, selfie videos, photos, client meetings, behind the scenes, public appearances, conversation screenshots, emails, possibly lead magnets with templates and free resources, or any podcast that the client appears on, because we're testing, we're seeing what resonates, and we're building a library of content. So what happens during these 100 days? Your network starts growing. People start engaging with your content, profile visits, they go up, and connection requests actually start to come in. Now, of course, some posts will perform better than others. That's expected. We're gathering data. So by the end of those 100 days, you have 100 pieces of published content, data on what works, a growing network of your ICP, and engagement signals that we can track. So we now double down on what's working. So after a few of the content pieces have gained more traction than the others, we turn those into thought leadership ads on LinkedIn. See, most founders, they hope LinkedIn algorithm picks up their content. We don't hope. We guarantee distribution. And here's how it works. I take your best performing organic post, the one that's gotten the most engagement, the most comments, the most profile visits, and we run them as ads. See, we're not targeting broadly. We just built a targeting list of your ICP using Sales Navigator and the engagement that we're tracking. So this list is exactly who sees those ads. So your best content is guaranteed to show up in their feed, on the feed of people exactly who you want to reach out to. And over time, they're seeing your content repeatedly. You're building recognition, you're building trust. And here's the beautiful part. They're not seeing an ad that says, work with me. They're seeing valuable content that demonstrates your expertise. It doesn't feel like an ad. It feels like content, but you're controlling who sees it. That's the real leverage. Now we start converting signals into conversations. So remember Teamfluence I mentioned, it's tracking every signal. Profile visit, new followers, connection requests, comments, link clicks. So when someone shows an intent, we reach out. And here's the approach. There's not a pitch. It's literally a conversation starter. Literally the easiest example would be, hey, I noticed you viewed my profile, curious what caught your attention, or saw you engage with my post on X. Are you currently evaluating solutions in that area? So it's a signal based outreach. We're not cold calling them, we're responding to interest they've already shown. Now, some of those conversations turn into calls, some of those calls turn into clients. This is the monetization layer. See, content builds trust. Ads, they guarantee distribution. Signals tell us who's interested, and outreach converts interest into conversations. This is the exact system. After a couple of weeks, this has been going on, we launch our newsletter. Because see, LinkedIn is powerful, but it is a rented platform. The algorithm controls who sees your content. But a newsletter, that's owned, that's personal. There's no algorithm. It's a direct line to your audience. So here's the exact strategy. I take your best LinkedIn content and expand it. Because see, we don't have any character limits. We can do deeper dives. There's more detail. So a bi-weekly cadence delivered directly to their inbox. And we grow this newsletter through, lead magnets, templates, guides, frameworks, resources, things that people actually want and would give their email to gladly access it. So over time, you're building an audience that's yours. So when you have something to share, you don't have to hope the LinkedIn algorithm, picks it up. You just send an email. That is another big piece of leverage. So after about 3 months or so, when all of these things are in motion, we expand to beyond LinkedIn, because everything we're creating on LinkedIn, we're now repurposing it across YouTube, across Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, X. And here's the exact workflow. The 1 hour weekly call we're doing, those recordings become YouTube videos. We publish those as long form content on YouTube. 10 to 15 minutes, deep dive into your expertise. And then we chop those YouTube video into shorts. So 60 to 90 seconds, key insights, tactical breakdowns, and these shorts get distributed across all of those other social media platforms. And all of it drives traffic back to either your YouTube or your LinkedIn profile. So you're not creating separate content for each platform. You're creating once and distributing it everywhere. And because you have to understand that you're reaching people where they already are. Most of your ideal clients are on LinkedIn, but some of them are on YouTube as well. And some are scrolling Instagram as well. But by showing up everywhere, you're increasing the chances they actually see you. And when they actually do, they follow the trail back to your LinkedIn profile or your YouTube channel. They see the depth of your content, they see your expertise, they see your story, and that's when the trust gets built. This is what I call a multi-platform flywheel. Content created once, distributed everywhere, and compounding over time. But we don't stop there. Yes, it is a personal brand, but here's another layer I think that most people miss, and why it can be one of those things that gives you a complete edge over your competition. Intent signals captured beyond LinkedIn. So we're not tracking signals just on LinkedIn. This time we're actively hunting for ready buyers outside of LinkedIn too. For example, we scrape intent signals from people engaging with competitor posts, or attending an event, on online webinar in your industry. Of course, podcast guests, people who like being interviewed to relevant topics, engagement on LinkedIn on your competitor posts, but they are relevant to your industry. Because see, these are warm signals, they're not cold. These people, they're actively interested. Then we build email sequences targeting those intent signal lists. And this is direct outreach. It's not waiting for them to see a LinkedIn post. Of course, some people respond, some don't. But the ones who do respond, they're already warm. They're in market. This is the active hunting layer on top of the passive attraction layer. So LinkedIn plus content equals passive attraction. They come to you. But this intent signal capture with email outreach is active hunting, where you go to them. And together, this just creates a system that generates demand consistently. So what does this look like when it's fully running in about 6 to 12 months? You have 6 to 12 months of published content, hundreds of touch points. Your name keeps coming up. People recognize you. This is brand equity compounding for you. Then you're not wondering where your next client is coming from. Profile visits are consistent, signals are being captured, and conversations are happening. This makes demand generation predictable. And of course, because you're no longer just another consultant, you're the one who does, let's say, X for Y. Your positioning, it filters out the wrong clients and attracts the right ones. That positioning of selectivity puts you in a much more controlled position with who you work with. And because you have a newsletter list that's constantly growing, when you have something to share, you don't need the algorithm. You just send an email because you have your own audience through that newsletter. And with the multi-platform presence, you're showing up everywhere. You're reaching people where they already are. Your expertise starts to finally work for you. Your stories are connecting with people and your content is doing the selling. That is leverage. The biggest impact you see is on the sales cycles. They shorten out because people already trust you before the call. They've consumed your content. They've bought into your thesis. They're not starting from zero. So the first conversation isn't about convincing them you're credible. It's about the right fit. It's about alignment. That's what a fully running personal brand system looks like. Now, you might be thinking, that's a lot of things. How much time do I actually need to get this running? So let me address this extremely important question. Of course, at the very beginning, it's 2 hours of deep dive conversation. That's it. Everything else, the setup, the tools, the infrastructure, I personally handle it. Moving forward, the 1 hour per week for the content call that I do, where I ask you questions and you talk, that's it. Everything else I personally handle. So all you're looking at is 4 to 5 hours per month that you need to get on a call with me. The rest of the things, the content, the newsletter, the strategy, the profile, the outreach, the software, every other thing I personally handle for you. So you only need to show up for the sales calls when they're actually happening and work on client delivery. All in all, this just gives you more freedom, more control over your business, and just brings in predictability in what's happening, what you can expect. And that predictability, it brings you that peace of mind. Okay, this is what's happening. This is what's working. This is who's coming in. This is who I'm working with. So that entire ecosystem just helps you become a more confident operator at the end of the day. And that's it. That's the entire blueprint. So if you're an established founder or executive who wants to build a personal brand that drives demand and actually generates revenue, this is exactly what we build together.